Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show. You are listening to Game Club from Wannabe Critic Productions. I am Gabriel Fast, and joining me today I have two very special guests. We'll get to them in a minute, but we're going to be recording a review of Metroid Dread. Obviously, you know, it's been out for a few weeks now at this point. We'll kind of talk about the Metroid series in general, but, you know, you got to give them, you got to give them a reason to, like, stick around till the end of the review. So that, you know, getting into it, for sure, we're going to be reviewing this game. But I wanted to go ahead and throw it to my co-hosts for this evening. First time Wannabe anything, you know, for both of these guys. They're both from Shared Screens. We have Alec, Bobco, and Bret. It's Jameson, right? Is that how you say it?
Jamerson.
Jamerson. I didn't know if the R was silent or, you know, I was like Jamerson, you know.
Okay.
So there you have it. Bret Jamerson. There you have it. Gentlemen, how are we feeling tonight?
Just getting home from My Hero Academia World's Heroes mission, and I am hyped. So I've got the hype going. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you're putting off a vibe for sure, and I'm digging it. So I'll give you a second to kind of, you know, process what happened. You're kind of geeking out
still
over there.
Pumping.
Yeah, no, I feel you
pumping.
for sure. I feel you for sure. I'm a little bit behind on the My Hero train. I think I got like season 3. I think is the last little bit I've watched because we do a show. Yeah, so I have a lot to catch up on, but yeah,
it got some good stuff though.
Awesome.
Seasons 4 and 5 are great.
Awesome. I'm super duper excited to watch those and talk about them. But Bret, how you feeling tonight, man?
Good. I got my heart ripped out today playing Mario Party. And yeah, so I've recovered from that, but I mean that game is so much fun today. I got to play it for a few hours, and it might be the best Mario Party ever, honestly. So riding that high.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and it's the highest reviewed one too. It's like 80, which is actually the highest Mario Party reviewed.
So Super Mario Party then is a far cry from this game then. It's like, is it like blow it out of the water? I mean, I enjoyed Super Mario Party. Like, it was fine.
Same.
Yeah, it seemed like, you know, kind of adding those online editions like a year later, it might have been a little too late. But this had
like 3 years.
Yeah, something like that. It was like a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like 3 years, wasn't it? That's wild.
Came out in 2018.
This is completely different though. Completely different feeling. Like you're digging it. You're vibing with it. You're loving it.
Yeah, so I'm probably higher on than most for Super Mario Party. But it was good, not great in my opinion. This one brings it back to honestly the formula since 8. So it's been like 14 years since we've had this specific style of Mario Party, and so all the classic boards, all the classic mini games, like they've nailed all these like super small detail stuff from every board game, map, mini games, all this stuff. So it's just phenomenal. So I've had a really good time with it, and can't wait to play more. And I hope I want DLC for this one, like, because there's only a couple wars. I'm like, I want like Mario Party 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like give it all.
Yeah, well, and I'm super excited to dive in because, you know, Super Mario Party was really like my first foray into the Mario Party games. I'm an only child, so, you know, and there weren't many people in, you know, little old Joplin, Missouri that were my age that you know, I was friends with. Really, I didn't have a ton of friends whenever I was growing up, and I didn't have an N64 either. So, and by the time, you know, it's like there's not really a reason to buy like Mario Party if you're not going to have parties at your house, you know. So for me and my wife, like, it was kind of one of those things. Like, we first started with Super Mario Party, and we're like, yeah, this is pretty fun. Like, this isn't bad. Not, you know, I had played here and there, you know, growing up and stuff, but like watching even the trailer for the new Mario Party, Superstars or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing. Like, I'm super down. So me and Emma are definitely gonna pick it up, and, you know, we have a lot of friends now, so we it's a must buy at this point.
The online is incredible. Like, it's better than what they added to the last one. You can jump in and jump out whenever you want. You can adjust the turns. Like, they actually did a pretty good job with that. So I was very impressed with all that stuff that they've added to the game. So yeah, it's phenomenal. If you like that one, you'll like this one way more.
Okay, well, you sold me. Your We have Brett Jamerson, ladies and gentlemen, just gave his Wannabe's honest opinion for the first time.
Let's
if I was
go, dude.
If I was a good producer, I would, I'd throw some applause in there and post, but I'm not going to do that. We'll just let it
necessary.
ride. We'll let it ride.
It's just another $60 I gotta spend.
Yeah, dude, so many games all the time. Like,
we just bought Guardians. Like, come on. That's why I'm holding off on Mario Party.
So I believe a mutual friend of ours, Bush League Gaming, Jacob Bush, just put out a review of Guardians. Kudos to him for getting a kind of early access. I know he was pretty proud of that. That was pretty rad. Have you had a chance to dive in yet, Alec? Because I'm super on the fence about. Here's the thing. I don't damn. Eidos is the one that did this one, right? That's the people who produced it. So I don't damn them based off of Square Enix poor publishing, decisions with the Avengers game. Like I don't write them off. But am I crazy in thinking that the press for this game and everything that we've seen on this game just hasn't really looked that stellar? Or is it, because to me it doesn't look, I don't want to say it looks like crap, but it doesn't look amazing to me. So how do you, what are kind of your first impressions? How does that play?
Play is the thing that actually got me. I saw a tweet. I can't remember, or this past weekend before it came out. I can't remember who it was from, but they said it was a mix of Insomniac Spider-Man meets Mass Effect, and I'm like, just from hearing that, I'm in. And honestly, it meets that. I don't say perfectly, but it is those two aspects of gameplay perfectly. Like,
almost kind of like
nice.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's like, it has the. It's not. It's kind of that jack of all trades, master of none. Like, it doesn't hit the gameplay perfectly, but man, it nails the vibe of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is honestly all I wanted, because it has the great music, it has the quippy jokes. It just nails the vibe of Guardians, and I am loving it. I'm about 3-4 chapters in, I want to say.
Okay. Cool. So you're like, do you think this is one where it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely worth the $60-$70, or where you kind of in one of those things like, yeah, you could probably wait for a sale, and it'd be like, that's how I kind of felt with what came out. Whenever Days Gone came out, I was like, yeah, if you want to, like, if you can get this game for $30, that is like a steal. It could have been, It could have been warranted to pay 60. I wasn't mad that I paid 60 for it. But is this one of those games where it's kind of like, if you can get this on any kind of sale, like $10, $20, like, yeah, like, definitely do that.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. If you can get on sale. Honestly, I'm happy with the full price purchase. Like, I'm loving the vibe and loving yeah. Honestly, I'm, not quite as far in as I would like to be at this point, but I am not regretting that $60 purchase. So
there you have it, folks. Spoken like a true wannabe. Now we have both you guys' opinions out in the wild, and you can expect more of that. It's funny we talk about $60, $70 experiences because we're talking about a 2D Metroid game tonight, right? Metroid Dread, and that game's $60, and very, very, very rarely do I ever pay $60 for a game and think to myself, like, oh, man, I wish I wouldn't have spent full price on that. Very rarely does that happen. I think the thing that's happened to that me most recently, and I think it's just for the fact that I haven't played a ton of it, is probably Deathloop. I just have barely played it.
Great game.
I've barely played it, and mostly because I can't get in the right mindset for it, to where it's like, one of those things. I could tell it has the Arcane effect, man, where Arcane makes games that feel completely different than everyone else's experiences, and you really got to be in a specific mindset, I think, to really like dive into that. But even then, I'm like, no, the quality is here. So it's funny that we talk about Metroid Dread tonight, because not only was I happy to pay full price for a 2D Metroid game, I would have paid $100, I think, probably for this game. Just so we could have had some extra, what I mean? Just so we could have had some extra cash flow going towards Papa Nintendo, just so we can get some more freaking Metroid games. But we're going to save that for later. We're going to talk about quality. We're going to talk about the game overall. We're going to talk about Metroid overall. I want to take a minute to kind of let you guys be able to express yourselves on your outlet. Of course, you both are from what previously was known as Waypoint.
Mhm.
you know, and you guys had a whole swath of content over there. I've been there since day one. Kind of observing you guys and kind of cheering you on, and admittedly in a space where we're all kind of creating things at the same time and covering similar subjects. You just can't cover all of it. So, and you can't consume all of it, even if you really want to. It's just not possible. But I can genuinely say it's been really cool to see you guys kind of build your team out and continue to create stuff that you're passionate about. And I want you guys to kind of break down what this means to you, what it's kind of explain what the initial idea was with Waypoint, and kind of go from there. So whatever it means to each of you, we'll start with you, Alec. You can go ahead and give
Mhm.
us, because you're kind of one of the main driving forces of this project, correct?
Yeah, I was one of the first people to join. Austin, he actually one of the other co-hosts and co-founders. He actually sent a group or sent a DM to a bunch of us and asked us to join. And I'm like, because I was streaming at the time, not anymore, just because I'm focused more on shared screens and creating content there. But I was kind of thinking like, I'm ready to like, I've been doing this for a little while. I'm ready to join a group and kind of like start a podcast. And it was probably maybe a month later. Austin came with that DM, and I'm like instantly yes, because it was the initial group was myself, Austin, Chris, aka Rumble Pack, some other Josh, Assemble, and Jordan D.
Oh,
And
the wild card, Jordan Deeb. I think
yes,
that guy's tweets are some of the funniest things I've ever read on the internet. There's things that he
Mhm.
says, and I'm like it takes me a second to even process how a human being would even think to say something like that. But he does make me laugh pretty hard. So
Oh, for
that's the
sure.
biggest compliment I could give to Jordan Deeb for sure. And plus, I very rarely do you find an outlet where you pretty much agree and you like everybody. You know what I mean? Like you're observing someone, you kind of
Hmm.
like. You just kind of watch this thing come together, and it's like everyone. I can genuinely say I like all of you for different reasons. You guys are
Oh,
definitely bringing things together, and it's a very diverse crew you guys have over there. So
mhm.
that's cool. That's cool. Now Matt Assemble. Now he did he. So I've always wondered about this. He kind of did he depart pretty soon after he joined? Like what was the story with that?
Yes. So that was more his content was kind of popping off a little bit after we started Waypoint. And he is also, he's a dad, so he has a family too. So it was hard for him to be a dad, create content for his own channel, and create content with us. So he, you know, I mean, mix. They're totally understandable. He, left, and then we were left with just the five of us. And eventually, we had started doing This is the Waypoint, which is our Mandalorian or Star Wars podcast, and that's when we brought Brett on. And eventually, we asked him to join the team after Mandalorian season two ended.
Yeah, that was kind of a triumphant moment because it was one of those things. I had been kind of tuning into Brett's streams, every now and then. Like I'd pop in for 10 minutes or so, and say I think he was doing like Pokemon or something a while back, and he's just a nice guy. We're talking about Coldplay and stuff like that, and whenever it was a surprise to me whenever I saw him join the crew because I was like, oh, that's cool, and
Mm-hmm.
now it makes total sense. Like you couldn't imagine it, without him. So
Oh,
that's
for sure.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, Brett, I want to throw it to you, man. Like, I mean, is there anything you want to add? I mean, Alec is kind of the king of summing things up. I think, so, what we have anything to add to that?
Yeah, he did a great job. I just gotta say from my perspective, because Alec, do you remember like the exact day that Waypoint started?
Uh, well, we had been going a little while before our first upload. The
Uh-huh.
first upload was October 24th of 2020.
Right. So and I feel like Mandalorian season two started late October too.
December.
Oh, was it December? Okay. So
I'm pretty sure it was.
okay. So that's when I started. And yeah, like I think from my perspective of just making content and doing podcasts and all the stuff we do over at Shared Screens, it's just a passion of talking about things you care about with cool people that you like to hang out with. And so that's kind of just the mindset I've had with it the whole time, because just keeping it simple and just having a good time. So yeah, when I got asked to do this is a waypoint for Mandalorian, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and so when I think Josh asked me to do it, I was like, heck yeah, I'll talk about the Mandalorian season 2, because like the anticipation for that season was just through the roof after how good the first season was. So yeah, I just love talking about things I like with people I like. So it's that simple.
It is that simple. You just summed that up beautifully. Like, what there's, I don't know if you guys are musicians or anything like that, or if you ever done any, performed in any aspect, theater or whatever. I'm a big, I've played music for years. I teach music. I, kind of do this thing. Nothing makes me feel more fulfilled than doing this. And there's just a level of performance. There's a level of like stress. There's this like level, this like perfect storm that comes together when you're trying to make something like this happen. And there's so many layers. Like, you may show up and you may have like the best points ever, but maybe you're not necessarily an audio nerd. You're not caring how it really sounds. You just want to like have the points come through. I've listened to many a podcast where it was literally an anchor recording from a phone, and there's people talking in a room, and it was great. And it's like, oh, podcasting is literally so multifaceted in that, there's just so many things to kind of dial in on. And whenever you have different people coming to the forefront that are good at different things, then inherently you're going to have a better podcast. So super happy to see your guys' journey, and congratulations on shared screens. Super duper cool. We'll continue to check out, the stuff in that space, see what you have coming in the future. I have a confession for Bret, though. I'm sorry.
Hit me with it.
I did not like Coldplay's new album.
Okay, that doesn't shock me as much as you think it would.
I shouldn't say I didn't like it. It just, I think I was expecting, they made such a big statement with their last one a couple years ago. And there are songs that are burned in my mind because it was right around the time that Death Stranding came out, and I had it on vinyl. It's still to this day my favorite vinyl that I own. It's like this gold marble. It's beautiful. And I had that record on repeat the entire time while I was doing deliveries. And I love that album. I love how like ballsy it was, really, to kind of change so much. So kind of to see them return to something, I don't want to say safe, but I mean, it's a relatively safe record. It almost feels kind of like a Milo Xyloto 2 a little bit to me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like hating it. It just, nothing really stood out to me about it other than, yeah, this sounds good. Like, but it wasn't significant to me, as much. But, I didn't want to like, I haven't listened to your review about it yet, so I didn't quite know how you felt, but I just had to admit that to you before we went any further.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair, because when the reviews for this album started coming out, it definitely was lower than some of their highest rated stuff. So I knew like the general vibe with it wasn't as hot as like their best classic stuff. So for me, I mean, they're one of my favorite bands. So I mean, I just appreciate it on a certain level just from that front of that. Yeah. It's my favorite band putting out more music. So there's certain songs that I vibe with, certain songs I don't, but I mean, I still love it all. Love that they're able to do like whatever they want at this point, because they've been doing it for like 20 years. And they're just stuff about, that's not even the music. It's honestly about the album, like that they were able to work with like my BTS, Selena Gomez, like all these like completely different artists I never thought they would ever work with.
Yeah.
And they're all, so there's just stuff about that I appreciate, even though that's not like the music itself, like stuff they're doing with the concerts and conservation efforts and stuff. So it's just cool. And I mean, yeah, there's definitely a couple of songs that I vibe with, but yeah, it is that Milo Xyloto vibe, but it's just not as good for sure.
It's almost like a Milo Xyloto B-side record, almost like,
yeah,
like they just didn't quite make the cut. They're still good, but yeah, no, that was very eloquent way to put that. I'm the same way with Foo Fighters. Like, I love everything Foo Fighters. Pooh Fighters? I almost said Pooh Fighters. Anything Foo Fighters puts out, I'm like automatically a fan of. Mm-hmm. I really, so I totally get it. Same thing with Bring Me the Horizon as well. So, I'm not overly critical of those two groups. So,
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we're going to transition into a little segment. Now we're feeling a little warmed up. I'm feeling good. Are you guys feeling good?
Oh, yeah.
I'm vibing.
vibing.
Oh, we said the same thing just then. Did you catch that? Did we are on the same way? Remember Yes Man? Remember that when he's like,
yes.
Did you catch that? We were on the same wavelength. Yeah, I love that movie.
I love Yes Man, dude.
Yeah, dude, I do too. It's so good. Underrated. So we're gonna transfer to a little segment we do over here. There's a show we have called Beer Bros. It's one of my favorite things to do whenever we have new guests on. Is I may have forgotten to tell you to bring an alcoholic beverage of some sort, Brett, but at least Alec brought his. But you're gonna review your drink as well, Brett, because you have the Halo Zero Energy Rockstar. So there's that. That's the only one I don't have. I have a whole case of the blueberry right here. It's a lot of double XP, boys. That's all I'm saying.
Let's go.
And I have like a bunch of other assorted cans back there too that are just chilling. I haven't popped the tabs on them yet, but there's this thing we do called Beer Bros. Sometimes we call it Bourbon Bros, but we just talk about what we're drinking this evening. Gets us even warmed up a little bit more. Just a little mini segment. So, I'll go first. So I am drinking Willet Special Reserve, I believe is what it's called. Willet is bourbon. It is delicious. Highly recommend. Nice and mild. Not too terribly expensive. It's like, depending on where you're at, it can be anywhere from $45 to $55 a bottle. But it's good stuff. And also, I'm drinking a Busch Light because I love Busch Light.
Hey.
I mean, sometimes Natty's my light beer of choice. Natty Light.
Choice.
Wow.
Listen, if you can't appreciate an ice cold Natty Light, and I mean ice cold, then can we really be friends? You know what I mean? Like,
hey, you're talking to somebody who enjoys drinking Ham's Special Light. So,
dude, I love Hams. Like,
it's so good.
It is. It's good.
It's so good.
They're almost synonymous at this point. Synonymous. Excuse me. So those are my two alcoholic beverages, of course. And then, of course, I have a little bit of water because I do get very thirsty and I got to keep that whistle wet. I'm drinking my water out of you boys see what that is right there? That glass right here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That looks nice.
Nice.
You know why I drink my water out of this mug?
Why is that?
Because I'm a winner.
Whoa. Yes, you are.
I'm just kidding. No, we love all the video games around here. So, Alec, what are you drinking, man?
So I'm drinking Bell's Official IPA. It is their hazy IPA.
Ooh.
And honestly, it's one of my favorite beers. I'm in Michigan, so I'm pretty much in the mecca of craft beers. Bell's is easily my favorite brewer. So the reason I like the official more than Two Hearted, which is one of the biggest beers in America for craft beer. For one thing, it's not as heavy as Two Hearted, being a hazy IPA, and I can honestly I've drink like one or two Hearteds and I'm done. But this, I can drink it all day. Like, it is just that amount lighter. It doesn't have that heaviness of the IPA.
Yeah. Well, and the difference in hops, obviously, hazy IPAs, also known as New England IPAs, kind of fitting in that similar style. Those East Coast hops, they're just inherently more fruity. And you go more to the West Coast, you're gonna get more of that piney flavor. And I'm the same way. We have a brewery here called Mother's, and they have a delicious hazy IPA. It has literally the coolest name ever. It's called Sunshine Chugsuckle.
Ooh.
And it is a freaking delicious IPA. I mean, it's definitely my favorite IPA. It's the IPA that turned me on to bigger and better IPAs, and just enjoying IPAs as a whole in general. And when people say like, "Oh, I don't like IPAs," you just haven't had the right. You haven't had the right one yet. That's how it's the same thing with sours. Like, once you find that IPA that you really like or that hits right, then it's gonna be like, okay, I'm willing to try.
That opens the gate.
Yeah, exactly. It really
because
does.
that's what happened with me and another Michigan brewer, Perrin. They have, one of their beers, IPAs is 98 Problems. And I had that at a restaurant. It's like, because I used to think IPA taste is terrible, but then I had that like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm liking this. And then it was just one of those, like, just all the dominoes kept falling. Ugh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I
and
totally get you, and it's one of those things. I think for people who say they don't like hazy IP or who don't like IPAs in general, I'm like, okay, we got to find the most like hazy IPA we can find for this guy or this girl or this person,
well,
and give it, have them try that. It's like, okay, it's like, hey, that tastes like orange juice, kind of, huh? You know what I mean? And then it's over. It's over from there. So
honestly though, like the 98 Problems, the one that I had was just a regular IPA. It wasn't a hazy.
Really.
So, yeah, it was just one of those like it's just the right taste,
Yeah.
like
Well,
the one that's not like that.
Yeah, and I mean water quality too. Just the brewing process. That's what's so interesting about beer and why we love talking about it over here at Wannabe Critic Productions because, we have a brewer on one of our shows. He, one of the beer bros from the east side because he lives in St. Louis and they're east of us. So it's kind of a joke that we have.
Gotcha.
He brews his own. he brews his own beer and
Okay.
Kind of hearing him kind of delve into the process. And I grew up with my dad brewing beer and stuff, and been around craft beer pretty much my whole life. So. It's a really beautiful process of making beer, and it's cool to hear other people's perspectives. What part of Michigan are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
Grand Rapids area.
Okay, cool. So my sister-in-law, she's from I believe Flint area. So how
other
close
side
is
of the
that?
state.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm on the west side of the state. There on Flint's on the east side.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with. I'm not good at geology, guys. All right, don't hold it.
So I'm like, no. Yeah, I'm like
Okay.
here. Flint's like there.
Gotcha.
Kinda.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we
I'm
have
being about Michigan, being from Michigan.
we have Busch Light, we have Willet, and Brett. What are you drinking?
So I did not bring an alcoholic beverage. I did bring a Rockstar energy drink. And so, I stopped at the gas station before I went to the gym today, picked up a couple of the Halo ones that I was looking for. And yeah, it's pretty good. I feel like most energy drinks always have a good taste. Like, I feel like there's maybe been a couple bangs that I did not like the taste, but I feel like most of the time the taste is pretty good. This one's a little like fruity, little like almost like a berry flavor, and it's very tangy, but I like that. Little tart flavor, and yeah, it's very good. And I mean, the art is amazing. Like, it just looks so cool. Like,
It's rad. It's super rad.
One away. I need one more, and then I.
Which
got
one
them
do you
all.
need?
The blue one. Whatever the blue art is.
Oh, that's literally the one. That's the one I have like a case of, literally.
I just ordered a case of the blue one the other day because I was
Nice.
like, I can't find it. I'm trying to find them all naturally. I give up. I'm just gonna order it.
That one might be that one's like one of the best tasting energy drinks I've ever had. Period.
Really?
It's
Wow.
really, if you like blueberry and that type of flavor, yeah, it's awesome.
Oh,
So,
okay. I got one for you guys then. Because I've been drinking a lot of the Mountain Dew Rise drinks.
oh yeah, I've had a
The
couple of those as
blue
well.
Pomegranate is so good.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I'll look for it.
All right, the next time I'm at a gas station and I don't have, one of the mini energy drinks I already have here, if I see it, I'll be like, you know what? Alec has good taste. I'm gonna pick this up just because he recommended it. So
Berry Blitz and the orange flavors are also good. Those are my 3 go-tos.
there you have it.
Cool, dude.
Spoken from the man Alec Bobko himself. Okay, gentlemen, we're about half an hour in. I think these people might want to hear us talk about video games at this point. So, as I said before, welcome to Game Club, officially, ladies and gents. This is Wannabe Critic Productions' exclusive gaming podcast, where we tackle the games of yesteryear as well as current games that are out. My favorite thing to talk about is, my favorite games, or maybe the games of old that I might have missed out on. Like right now, I'm going through Sly Cooper. We have episodes of Halo coming out right now. Stuff like that. Lots of projects in the work at all times, and I love going back to old games. So it's always kind of fun to feel like its own little book club, a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we try to reach out on Twitter, or I do. I kind of manage all the socials. There's only so much one guy can do, though. We try to reach out on the socials and get opinions. But if there's a game that you would want us to go over, definitely make sure you leave a comment down below. Also, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, any review whatsoever seriously means the world. A lot of podcasters are like, give us 5 stars so we can stay relevant. I'm not going to guilt you as a listener of my production to try and give me 5 stars if you don't think it's warranted. If you do, though, I mean, God bless you.
Just give him the 5 stars.
Yeah.
Come on.
Thank
you,
That's
thank
so
you.
easy.
Thank you. Yeah, it is easy, but you know, I'm not going to ask for it.
As Shia says, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, exactly. So we are tackling one of. This is a very important franchise for gaming in general. There's a term that that gets thrown around a lot, Metroidvania. Obviously, the Metroid series and the Castlevania series. Kind of setting up this formula of you see this area you can get to, but maybe you don't have the item or the ability that you need to get to said area, so you have to explore your environment to get to that area, and maybe it may be an area or maybe something at the very beginning of the game that you see, and it's like, man, I wonder when I'm going to be able to go back to that. And it might be to literally the very end of the game, you know, and who knows? I always loved that about Metroid, but I kind of wanted to ask you guys, we've established, you know, obviously this is a very super important series. The first one came out in 1986 for the original NES, and since then has had many forays and even a few first-person experiences in the Metroid Prime series, in my top 10 favorite gaming franchises of all time. I wanted to ask you guys kind of what's your history with Metroid. Alec, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I first saw Samus, I should say, in Smash Brothers for the N64. Then I love playing as Samus, but the first actual Metroid game I played wasn't until Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance, and that's actually one of the few Metroid games I've actually played. Messed around a little bit with Super Metroid, but after playing Fusion, because I played that as a kid and I loved the heck out of Metroid Fusion and played that so many times. Got pretty much down to a science, and played Super Metroid and wasn't quite digging it, so moved past along. Never or played a little bit of Metroid Prime, but it was never my game. I always rented it or borrowed it from a friend. And then I got Metroid Dread, so really haven't played too many Metroid games, but
there's no shame in that. And it's interesting hearing you say you played Fusion first, because Fusion was the direct next game after Super Metroid. So in 94, there wasn't any Metroid at all until Metroid Fusion came out. And it was a huge deal because, Super Metroid had met so much critical acclaim in the 90s, my history with it was, my cousins, they grew up and they knew where all the secret spots were. Like, they'd fight Mother Brain. They had 250 missiles or something like that. Like, they knew all the secrets, and I think Super Metroid was kind of ahead of its time in a lot of ways, not only for the platforming genre, but for the exploration genre in general. And Metroid Fusion, while very good, was kind of just more of an isolated experience. And not quite as. I don't want to say there's not as much depth, because I do think it plays better. It is. I don't think it's the superior game, but it's definitely more aesthetically pleasing, and it's more focused, which I do think is a good thing. So, yeah,
and it still holds up.
And it's still.
Literally played it right before Dread, and it honestly still holds up.
Well, and whenever I booted up Dread, I was like, oh my God, I forgot how much I love these games. I love Metroid. I love Metroid in general, but I just like I said, it's in my top 10 favorites. Mm-hmm. So literally, I was like, you know what? I got to do this right. So I went out, I bought a GameCube, and I bought a Game Boy player, and I bought a mint condition version, barely been opened, Metroid Fusion. So I'm super looking forward to having a physical copy of Metroid Fusion to play, do Let's Plays and stuff, just kind of as a passion project, like I did with my Let's Plays for Metroid Dread. But it's kind of cool to hear your history. Brett, what's your history with Metroid?
So like Alec, my history with Metroid started with Samus being in Super Smash Bros. On the N64, because I was born in 1993, so Super Metroid came out when I was 1, so I wasn't too on the ball there with that at that age, clearly. But yeah, I was just drawn to Samus's power suit design in Smash. I was just like, who is this character? Like, they look freaking awesome. They have all these cool moves. And then, like Alec as well, I got into Metroid around, I believe they came out around the same time, if not the same day. Metroid Prime and Fusion were like both like fall 2002. And I think I got Prime first, and that game just blew me away with its presentation, its controls. Metroid is like the ultimate vibe check. Like, you're just in, like, it's so funny because Metroid is so focused. Like, the Metroid community loves speedrunning. That's a huge aspect to the Metroid fandom. But I love taking it slow, man. I just love like getting immersed in these worlds and just letting myself go on this journey at the pace I prefer. And yeah, I got into Fusion as well. That story is incredibly engaging. I love how focused it is, like you said as well, Gabe. Yeah, and then got the Platinum GameCube with Metroid Prime 2, got Prime 3 day one, like Prime Hunters with my DS when that launched. Like, I've just been a part of the franchise.
Oh, I forgot about that demo.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
it was so good.
That
Like,
demo was awesome. That was an awesome demo. Like,
and yeah, the demo was incredible. And then the full game, like, the multiplayer was freaking sweet. Like, I know the controls weren't 10 out of 10, but I like the multiplayer. Like,
you had to swipe for the morph ball, if I remember right.
Yeah, there's like 30 maps. Like,
well, yeah, and you had like kind of one of your first instances in a way of people using kind of the claw formation, right? Because you had to use your pinky to shoot. And I remember thinking as a kid, I'm like, God, this is hard. But I remember thinking, this is Metroid though. Like, it should be hard, you know, like it should be, there should be a level of difficulty to this. But the fact that you could play online and like, you know, using all the different hunters and stuff like that, I spent hours and hours playing that game online.
It had voice chat too, by the way.
Yeah, it was. I mean, way
on a DS,
way ahead of its time.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
You think about if that game came out now on the Switch,
oh
there would be no question as to whether or not if Metroid's going to stay successful or not, because it would inherently be.
Instead, they did Federation Force.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started.
That's a good game. The art style is not the best. The actual game itself is okay, and it's going to be super important for Prime 4. So you may not have to play it, but just watch the YouTube video where they sum up that story. Then
gotcha.
Yeah, I might go back and play. I remember playing a little bit of it and thinking to myself, no, I can't do this. But I do need to play it as a, you know, if I claim to be a hardcore Metroid fan, you know, I do need to play it. So, Brett, I have to ask, have you gone back? Okay, have you played Zero Mission?
Yeah. So leading up to Dread, I played the 5 core Metroid titles, and Zero Mission, again, that was another game that I remember getting for my birthday, I believe, in 2004. Had a Game Boy player as well, and it would have Disney Channel up on the big TV, on the small 20-inch TV. I would have my Game Boy player with Metroid Zero Mission going, and yeah, that game is phenomenal. It's what a remake should do in terms of refining the original while also expanding upon it a little bit too. So an incredible game. It's a great 1-2 punch with Fusion's linearity, and Zero Mission has a little more sequence breaking and things like that. So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of did the same thing with Return of Samus, you know, on the 3DS, which I was fully ready. I said this on a podcast recently. I think we said it on Punch Counter Punch. I was like, I was fully ready for that to be the last 2D Metroid we ever got. Like, because for the simple fact, why are these Metroid games so taboo in the gaming industry? Does anyone know, like, why it's such a big deal?
So I was thinking about this, and I'm talking with my friends over the months after Dread got announced, and like, this is the first time a Metroid game has come out on a system ready for it to explode in success. Like, I mean, obviously the Metroid in the 80s and 90s did very well because the NES was gangbusters, Game Boy was gangbusters. Super Nintendo, it came out at the end of that life cycle. There was no game on N64, and then GameCube, nobody really bought the GameCube, so that was a thing. And then Wii, you know, it's all Wii Sports and things like that, so the audience was not primed for Metroid Prime 3 for that. So yeah, it's just the perfect storm, honestly, for a Metroid title to succeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the nail on the head too. Like, you said it without even having to say it. It's just for the simple fact that these games don't make money. It is a cult classic, and I think there's a few things in the history of these Metroid games coming out that have been kind of, I don't want to say could have killed it, But you had a really cool opportunity to kind of revitalize and breathe new life into this series. You know, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is a very good game. If you can find the Metroid Prime trilogy on Wii, play those games that way, because Metroid Prime is a very rare case where I think there are no mistakes in that game. It is a 10 out of 10, like across the board. Like it is like, me and my cousin were talking about this, like when Super Mario Odyssey came out. Like I think that game is like fun wise and like entertainment wise, it's kind of on the same level like as Metroid Prime, just in terms of like exploration and execution. If you can play those games on Wii, do it, because they are just incredible. But they had a really cool opportunity to push the narrative further and you know, expound on something we already loved by giving Super Metroid a sequel in Other M. And obviously Other M, if you guys don't know, it was developed by Team Ninja, the same that's right, isn't it? Team Ninja? Hold on. Yeah, Team Ninja, who is notorious for making the Ninja Gaiden games, right? So, and people hated it. It was incredibly unsuccessful, and they took many things away from things that made Metroid great in the first place. You know, Samus is obviously female, and the fact that she can continue to go through these missions and whatever, you know, apparently Team Ninja thought that they had to give her a softer side when she didn't really need that. I mean, she's perfectly capable of taking care of business without any help from anybody. So they kind of, I enjoyed Other M for many aspects, but there were many things about it I was like, I don't know, you know, but it's a fine game. It's whatever. Obviously, so let's kind of go down the timeline here. So we have Super Metroid, banger. Metroid Fusion, banger. Metroid Prime, banger. 2 years later, Zero Mission and Echoes came out at the same time. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes came out at the same time. Metroid is continuing to stay relevant. Metroid Prime Pinball came out on DS. Metroid Prime Hunters came out on DS. And that's, I think, the teetering point. Hunters. They put all this focus and kind of all their eggs in one basket for a DS title, okay? So then we get Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, which by that time, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Brett. There's so many distractions with the Wii. You know, this is the time of, you know, the Xbox 360 is out, PlayStation 3 is out. There are so many innovative titles coming out and things that are taking away from people's attention. And Metroid Prime 3 Corruption just didn't stand out very much. It's a great game. It's a proper end to that trilogy. But go ahead, Brett. Do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, like I remember. I mean, it was the summer of 2007. So literally, like the very beginning of the Wii craze, and I remember seeing commercials left and right of those two like Japanese businessmen doing the suitcase thing with Metroid, and yeah, it's interesting that. And this is just obviously my personal opinion, but Prime 3 is probably the weakest one out of all three of them.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just not the right, and it did lean into the motion stuff, which worked for me most of the time, but there were a couple occasional snafus with that, and yeah, it just, especially during that era too, like a lot of people forget that console wars were super crazy back then. Like
that's where I mean, it was the revitalization of Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo. I mean, it was, I mean, the worst it ever was. It was like, Xbox is better, you know, like you like the Wii, like everybody, whether you had a PS3 or an Xbox 360, you had a Wii, like no matter what, you know, everyone had a Wii. It's still like the top selling console of all time. So, or one of the top, I think it's in the top 3. So, but yeah, you hit it on the head though. Like, wasn't a lot of it. There was too much attention around other things. There was such an important time for the big guys, so to speak, to kind of innovate on gaming as we know it now. And they relied pretty heavily on the motion sensor gimmick, which the game did not need. We needed options. We needed options to be able to play that game on a controller. Really, really bad. So after Corruption, the Prime trilogy came out 2 years later, completely redone, which was great. And then we get Other M. Then we don't get another Metroid game for 6 years. Metroid Prime Federation Force was the resurgence. Then it was like, oh my god, I can't, like, by that time in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, Metroid's dead. Like, this isn't happening. Like, they're putting all their eggs in the handheld market yet again. The DS is well on its way out at this point. Because by that time, I think the Switch had already been announced in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was 2017?
That fall, it was October 2016 when they officially announced it.
Right. So, to me, I'm already thinking, well, this is it. Metroid's dead, So then when we get Samus Returns the next year, I bought it and I was telling all my friends to buy it. I was like, dude, this is the game. Like, if you are buy a 3DS, buy a 2DS, buy a way to play this game. Like, please, for the love of God. And I loved it. Like, I loved returning as it, and I was fully ready to accept. It's like, okay, that was fun. All good things, I guess, have to come to an end.
Great amiibos too.
Yeah, great amiibos. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Then Nintendo does the most Nintendo thing ever by announcing Metroid Prime 4, showing off a teaser. And I had tears in my eyes. I was like, no way. Like, I was like yelling. As I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the first Direct where they announced Smash as well, correct? Back in 2017? At the end of 2017? It feels like we had two Directs that were like two Directs back to back. I think that's what happened. If not, they were super duper close to each other, because I remember like, oh my God, that's the best Direct I've ever seen. Then they did something even crazier. We start seeing marketing for a new 2D Metroid game that's been rumored for like 15 years at this point. Metroid Dread, that was like the code name for this that had been rumored for years. This is a follow-up to Fusion, because chronologically, that is the last thing that happened to Samus, was Metroid Fusion. So, as a huge like Metroid nerd, like I've grown up with this, I'm like jumping up and down, like, yeah, this is awesome, like loving it. And here we are now. We have, after all that, we have played the game, we have beat the game, and boy, we're about 48 minutes in, and I got a lot of hot takes, and I'm about 2 fingers of whiskey in. So,
Ooh, let's go.
I know. I have to ask you, gentlemen. Did you like this game?
I loved it.
Yes.
I was blown away in so many aspects. I think you run into a challenge, right, with a game like this, 2-dimensional. What are some of you guys' like favorite platformers to date, like that are modern? Would you say? Because you guys have the big three. You got PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch, right? Mm-hmm. So and Nintendo, right? So, what are some of your like modern 2D platformer, Metroidvania, whatever style games that you find yourself like loving these days that you consider the standard?
The Ori games, those are really good.
Ori, Shovel Knight a little bit, I guess. It's not as much of the Metroidvania, but it is a platformer a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the exact same way. The first few that came to mind for me, I'm thinking Dead Cells. I'm thinking Hollow Knight.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking
Hollow Knight.
I'm thinking the Ori series. I have to give. I don't know if you guys listen to my show that often. I criticize Xbox a lot. And it's only because I believe they can do amazing things outside of Game Pass. Game Pass is people don't want to admit this. Game Pass was a vehicle for them to rise back into being relevant. But we still have yet to see much of anything impressive come out of that. Sans Halo Infinite, of course. They have won back my good faith. Now, I believe they are going to produce quality content. But there are a handful of these, I'm sure Ori will probably come to PlayStation sometime in the future, because that studio is not owned by Microsoft by any means. But, they've been... It would not shock me, is all I'm saying. It's come to Switch. Mm-hmm. Microsoft and Nintendo tend to play nice, but whenever Ori and the Blind Forest came out, I was blown away. That's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's a Metroidvania. Same thing with Hollow Knight. When Hollow Knight came out, I was like, this is a love letter to Super Metroid. Like, somebody made this game with the intent of letting people know that they love Metroid. and I love Hollow Knight, but Ori especially, and I think for me, just in terms of visuals, Ori is kind of the standard. Like, if you're going to design a 2D platformer, Metroidvania style game, it better be as good looking as that, because that's what people are going to go to. If people love that game, and that let's say that's the only style of game they play, you put out a Metroid game, which has supposedly pioneered this genre, it better be as good looking as Ori. So the question I present to you guys, it's amazing whenever a plan comes together. I was hoping we would get into this. Do you think Metroid Dread is as good looking as Ori?
Oh yeah. Like, I played all of it docked, and on my 4K TV, and I know Switch can't output 4K, but man, it looked amazing every second.
Yeah, I had no qualms with the visuals. There was multiple times where I was taken aback by not only the visuals of kind of the stuff in the foreground, but even the stuff in the background, with all the kind of teeming life that you saw going on in the background. And yeah, like this game, like, because I know the Switch especially, like, is not, a workhorse in terms of technical power, but this game, even this game was still making me sit back and be like, wow, this looks freaking amazing. So yeah, incredible.
Spamming
visuals.
that screenshot button.
Yes, yeah. I definitely spammed the screenshot button.
I mean, I had it running docked as well. I played it all docked. That's typically how I play my Switch, is docked.
Same.
And I was capturing footage. So if you watched my Let's Plays, if anyone listening to this watched any of my Let's Plays, which you go check those out. Those are still coming out now. It would look better on my monitor, of course, because I was projecting, on my ultra wide and stuff. So I would be looking over, I had my my face blocked over where my health was and my rockets were. So anytime I was like needed to check for rockets or health, I'd just be like looking over. And every time I would like look over, I'd be like, oh my God, like this game, dare I say, I mean, it's pretty hard to beat Breath of the Wild in terms of visuals. But that's probably the best 2D looking video game I've ever seen in my whole life. I mean, like, it's gorgeous. Yeah. And I loved how they programmed things in such a way to where, like, right before you fight a boss fight, like the first time you fight the thing with the cube in its tail, you see it kind of like slither, and I'm like, what was that? Like, I had to like kind of go back and rewind footage. Yeah. I'm like, what is that? Like, what was that? That was wild. Or whenever you're kind of going to Bernaria for the first time and you hear like the pounding, and I'm like, what is that? What's going, like, scary, and I think it brought to life so many like tiny details of the Metroid games of old, where you kind of had to use your imagination for the horror aspects, but now with technical, modern technology, they were able to actually execute those moments where I was legitimately scared. I was like, you think about the first time the SAX chases you in Metroid Fusion, and you're hiding, your morph ball like under whenever it pops in, you're like, oh my God, that's scary, and like it cuts to its face, it has a very blank face, blank stare, as it's looking at the screen, and I remember being scared as a kid, being like, oh my God, that was scary. This now with like, a nice like headset and, just completely different story altogether. It's like, wow, they really executed this thing that they've been trying so hard to work on for so many years. Think about like Super Metroid. You show up to the, the laboratory, and there's dead people everywhere. So you would kind of have to use your imagination as to like, well, how did we find ourselves here? Yada, yada, yada. And I love how they were able to execute kind of that modern horror aspect and make it look just so freaking gorgeous and give a proper follow-up to Metroid Fusion. It's just amazing. Did you guys have any qualms with the game? I know we're probably going to sing its praises continuously, but I in a true wannabe fashion, I think it's important to bring to attention the things that maybe we weren't so crazy about, or things that, objectively speaking, if a general player, maybe someone who's not such hardcore of a fan, if they were to pick up this game, how they might feel about certain aspects of the game. Because as someone, as you guys could probably, kind of resonate with, we're all kind of trying to break into this industry and have voices in this industry and do various things in this industry. You kind of have to take a step back from your personal preference and be like, how is the average player going to react to X, Y, and Z? So I wanted to ask, was there anything that stood out in your guys' mind about this game? And I suppose we should probably read the synopsis for this game too at some point. But basically in this game, Samus goes to this planet. There's a bunch of killer robots, and you're trying to uncover the mystery. That's the story in a nutshell. There you have it. But were there any things that you weren't crazy about in this game? We'll start with you, Alec.
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is the control scheme was a little odd. Like just how, like, yes, you're using like the triggers in combination with different buttons. It's like it was just seemed like to me. I'm like, man, I wish I had my Elite controller on this so I could like control some of the some of the buttons like on the paddles on the back, just to make things a little bit easier.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think, Brett?
Wait, quick question, Alec. What controller were you using?
Pro controller.
Okay. Yeah, because for me too, like I definitely got a handle on the controls, but there was the first like hour or two where I'm like, oh, I kept trying to hit ZL to slide. I'm like, oh, it's L, like all these like things that definitely tripped me up. For me, and I mean they're totally subjective, like anything. I think there was like a part at the beginning of the game where I got like lost, and it was like it wasn't even a puzzle. It was just like I had to shoot like one of these like pieces of a wall to uncover like that it would break, and then you can like kind of crawl into because you don't have the morph ball yet. And I was like, oh, like I just had to shoot at this random like piece of wall. Like the game didn't tell me anything about that, like because some of the stuff like doesn't show cracked walls, things like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, like, but I mean that was just part of the journey. I like getting lost, I guess, in a weird way. And then another thing too was some of the power ups. In terms of the order we got them, like I feel like the Aeon scan ability that you get like at the like 95%, you're 95% done with the game, and then you get it, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just go like, because I was streaming this, so I was just kind of going through the main plot, and I was like, okay, like I guess like normally you would just go to every sector and scan for everything, because with Metroid 2 on 3DS, they gave that to you off the rip, and so that was super useful to use just to explore the world. And yeah, and then I think the cross bumps too, you got that very late, and I thought that was such a cool tool, not only for sequence breaking but just for exploring different ways to move around the terrain. So that's about it.
It's funny you mentioned controls because I used a 8-bit DOE adapter to play with my DualSense, so I played the entire game on my DualSense.
Wow.
And yeah, if you guys don't have that, highly recommend. It makes Breath of the Wild a completely different experience altogether. And even Splatoon, like, I mean, it completely changes the way, and I believe it works with your Xbox controllers too. So I think it's like $20. It's just a USB stick that basically makes your Switch think that it's just like an external third-party controller. So you can use pretty much any controller you want. So I use my DualSense the entire time. And I've basically dubbed the DualSense as being the greatest controller ever made outside of the GameCube controller. So there you have it.
Agreed.
It's a weird thing, subtopic or side topic. It's a weird thing when you pick up this Elite V2, which is a dope controller. You got one too, Alec?
Yep, V2.
I love this controller. Mm-hmm. It's a super duper weird feeling when you pick this up and you're like, yeah, but it ain't my DualSense. Yeah. So strange, because I would have considered 5 years ago this would have been the pinnacle in gaming controllers. This would have been the GOAT. Mm. But it doesn't have adaptive control. It doesn't have adaptive triggers. Now, granted, it does have paddles, which is great. But yeah, I mean, to me, if I can play all my games with my DualSense, I will. I play Halo on my PC with my DualSense. Completely different feeling. Love it. So Metroid was a super interesting thing to play, on DualSense, and I had a blast with it. I liked what you said, Brett, about the control scheme though, because I did feel like it being kind of the continuation control wise of Samus Returns, because I went back and I bought Samus Returns again digitally to replay, and sorry, I'm putting this back really quick. And it was one of those things where whenever you pull up, basically like your ADS, function, it was a little cumbersome at times. It was a little weird at times, trying to control, especially in your Emmy encounters. and which I do think added a certain stress to the game. But yeah, I do have to agree with you. The controls were a little, I appreciated a more simplistic approach with the GameCube control or the Game Boy controls. But yeah, and then what was your qualm, Alec, in the beginning?
Controls.
That you were controls, Brett, and you said you got
Yes.
lost. Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Sorry, I got those kind of flip flopped. So I had a lot of problems with this game actually. I'm a diehard Metroid fan. I've played them all. I've played all of them except for the original Metroid, which, let's be real, the original Metroid and the original Samus Returns, like, there's no reason.
Oh my god, yeah. I played 2 on stream, and I'm like looking at the map constantly because it's like, yeah, they're fun. They're fun, but yeah, they're definitely dated.
Yeah. So I mean, the journey started with Super Metroid for me. I've played them all except for Federation Force, so I'm a really, really big Metroid fan. I appreciate the modern approach in trying to make aesthetics, make it seem like Metroid's never missed a beat. My biggest problem with this, and you guys might take umbrage with this, and that's fine, we can talk about it. The boss battles are too hard for a Metroid game, in my opinion. I feel like we were so focused on trying to make this game feel modern. If I'm the Metroid developer and I'm like, what do gamers want? The viewpoint, in my opinion, should have been, what do Metroid fans want? Because to me, this totally felt like a Hollow Knight-esque difficulty of boss battles. And granted, boss battles have always been hard in Metroid games. They always have been that way. But am I crazy? Did it feel like we kind of took a step up? I mean, the boss battles are way harder in this game than they are in Metroid Fusion, right? So, I mean, what do you guys think? Am I crazy?
You're not crazy in the sense that they're harder, but I mean, because I literally played Metroid Fusion right before this, and I think the fact that they added the checkpoints made it kind of offsets that, because you're not going from your your last save point all the way back to the boss. You're literally just right back in. So it's all about, learning the patterns and getting those down, because it's something I had mentioned on our own spoiler cast, but it almost feels like it's your fault for not getting those patterns. Like, I actually looked up some guides through this game, because there's some points where I'm just like, it wasn't clicking for me, like what to do. And the guides didn't give me any help. They're just like, yeah, just dodge this, just do this. Like,
Yeah.
They weren't really giving any help. It was just like, you just got to do it.
Well, go ahead, Brett.
Oh, no, I was going to echo everything Alex said. He put it beautifully. I think it is certainly harder. I think this is easily the Metroid game I've died the most in.
Agreed.
But, and it's not necessarily like, it doesn't just get, make that point null and void, but the fact that the checkpoints are so prominent and numerous, like, makes them, I feel like the only time the checkpoint really was not unfair, but like tougher, was the final boss, where you had to go through all 3 phases. But that's the final boss. I get that. And so, yeah, I feel like it's definitely more difficult, but I feel like with the checkpoints, it offsets that a little bit. And then just playing through all the Metroid games previously, like, this one is tougher, but I do like how there's phases, like more distinct phases in these boss fights. And Mercury's team did this a little bit with Samus Returns on 3DS, like, because some of the boss fights in some of the classic Metroid games, like, there's not distinct phases, or you don't know what you need to do. Whereas, and it's a lot of it's through trial and error in Dread. But once you like know, okay, I'm in this section of the boss fight. Okay, I know they're going to do this, and you start learning through that process. So I feel like that's a benefit, but I guess, I mean, it might be a con, just depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, like, I look at the gaming space in general, and I think about what the gaming meta wants, right? And I think as a community, developers have kind of gotten this idea that we want games and we want these feelings to be like just harder across the board. Like even something like I still have not played Jedi Fallen Order because I don't like Souls games. Like I just don't. And it is a Souls game. Like it feels like a Souls game. I'm not good enough at video games to like waste time like that. I feel it gets to a point to where you know the phases and it's like, well, frick, should I go explore more or what? And it's like, well, I'm already here. Like, why don't I just try and beat this? You know what I mean? It's just
That's what I did. Just powered through it.
That's the same thing. Whenever I would struggle with a boss, it's like, no, I'm not freaking coming back here. I'm here now. We're gonna do this. But there was a sense of weirdness for me in that this is the first game, to my knowledge. Is there a checkpoint system in Samus Returns? I can't remember. For 3DS.
So, I mean, yeah, I think there is. I don't think it's as generous as Dreads is, but there were moments where whenever you're fighting a Metroid, like it would just plop you right in before that room. So yeah.
Okay. I don't know that I like that. I almost wish there would have been a save room right before it, and given the same effect, for the simple fact of whenever you come back to life, that feeling of, the dun, 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 you are rejuvenated. Because
oh yeah,
that sound, that music gives you almost that push you need to, like, for me, it's always been like, I can do this. Instead of just putting me right back to the point, it's like, oh, I guess I'm going to fight this freaking guy again. And here's my biggest qualm with the difficulty. There were bosses in this game that were harder than the last boss, that I struggled with more than the last boss. Like the crossbomb boss, I died way more to him than I did the final boss. like I was like, oh my god, I was getting so mad. And I'm like, why did we make a Dark Souls game for Metroid? Granted, the boss battles should be hard, but at the same time, when Kraid showed back up and you fight Kraid again, I was in shock. I was like, what is he doing here? Like, super like chills moment. I loved that. And it was exciting to get to restart that boss battle over and over again. Like I was happy to do that. And I feel like for the most part, that's kind of what Metroid games have always been famous for, is you're not begrudgingly restarting boss battles. So, and trying to fight the Chozo warriors repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly,
gosh.
That pissed me off. Holy crap. So annoying.
So hard.
Dude. But, oh my god.
But what's funny, like, at least for me, is then there's that next time you fight them where there's two of them. And for whatever reason, like, I don't know if I just, like, got that pattern down, but that second time where there's two of them, I didn't struggle at all. Like, I think I might have finished it within them 3 attempts. Like,
yeah. You definitely, that newness kind of wore off a little bit, for sure. Like, once you learned them and, you've acquired some more energy and stuff like that. But there was that air of, you better not get hit or you're going to die.
That's one qualm, yeah. Like, there's some enemy attack, like boss attacks, that would take like 2 tanks of health.
Yeah, it's which is crazy.
Ridiculous.
Like, that's crazy. And I mean, like, I feel like I would have been farther along in terms of items, in other Metroid games by the time I got to the end of this. I think I ended up fighting the big baddie Chozo. I think I only had like 6 energy tanks or something like that. Like, not very many. But I learned his pattern super fast, and he was genuinely fun to fight. Like,
yeah,
he was a cool boss. And the Chozo, we want to talk about them for just a second. Do you guys know the history with the Chozo? Obviously, Brett does, but Alec, are you familiar at all? Do you kind of know the backstory?
Not quite as familiar, but a little
Ridley,
bit.
We all know Ridley, right? So Ridley, it was kind of like, he's a space pirate, essentially. He's like a space pirate captain, and he kind of had his own like cadre of space pirates that he commanded and stuff like that. And he attacked the planet that Samus's family was on, and killed everybody that Samus knew. So Samus was adopted by the Chozo.
Yep.
So she kind of, she grew up on Zebus, all that jazz, and that's kind of how she came into, acquire her various suits. So that whole lore aspect was one of the coolest things I've ever seen come full circle in video games, period. Because you had this revelation when she starts talking in Chozo to that guy, that gave me chills. Awesome. And then the freaking music from, you know, Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, like, kind of came in, and I was like, oh my god, like, I was like almost like tearing up a little bit because it was just so rad to see like such love given to that character. And like, you know, she was talking, but she wasn't vulnerable like they made her in Other M. Like, she had a commanding presence, and like, she was rad. And I loved that final boss battle. And they kind of, you know, I want to say they kind of retconned the story a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of cover that in Metroid Prime 4. You know, and continuing that story. I'm hoping they don't do something to where it's like, all right, yeah, Metroid Prime 4, like, there's a time loop. So there's 2 Samuses. There's a 2D Samus and a first person. Like, that would be stupid. I hope that doesn't happen. But kind of getting back to the boss battles, that was a big issue for me. Because not only did we fight the same bosses over and over again in some aspects, but it was like, God, why is this guy so much harder than the last boss, who's a blast? That's kind of a core thing of Metroid, is that every single boss is genuinely pretty fun to fight. I think Metroid Prime 2 might have the best boss battles in the series. Just because of the diversity and the areas and like just the things you have to do, and like just the lore around that game is so rad with like the different dimensions and stuff. But I was disappointed in the difficulty because it should have been hard, but not to the point to where I didn't want to play anymore. I think that's an issue. And I think for the common gamer who may not love hard games but are super interested in sci-fi, I don't know that they would finish this game based off the boss battles. What do you guys think?
I could see that, but at the same time, like, if they're like me, because I play a bunch of games on, you know, easy mode and just to get through it. And honestly, you know, because I did myself, like, I'm not a Souls person either. I got through Jedi Fallen Order, put it down to easy, got through it, but I was just like, I know I can do this. Like, it's like I'm so close to just nailing it. Like, I got hit by like one attack that took a bunch of health out. It's like I'm getting these patterns. Like, I know what to do. I just need to do it. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, if they aren't just like rage quit monsters, I think I think a lot of gamers could get through this if they just kind of like hammer down and just like kind of figure out the patterns. Because that's all these bosses are. It's just you just gotta have to figure out the pattern.
Except for one key aspect, because I agree with you. Just, you know, if the boss battles were all we had to worry about, that'd be a completely different story. But then we throw in the Emmys.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk about, because I admire... Who developed this? Did you say the developer's name, Brett?
Mercury Steam.
Yep.
So I admire them for trying something super new and super different. We needed the Emmys to be gone or have a way to kill all of them like halfway through the game. Just because it got to a point where I'm like, this is irritating me. Like, this isn't fun right now for me. Like, okay, I get it. It's scary. Like, we get it. These guys don't stop. But it would have spoken way more to the mythos of Samus. Because, I mean, Ravenbeak straight up tells her in the game, he's like, you know, resistance is futile. Like, you're going to die. It's going to happen. Like, just don't even try. It would have been the most Samus thing ever for her to find something. I kept thinking this was going to happen, where you would find something where you could kill these things easily. Like, I was like, is she going to find, like, Omega rockets? Like, what's going to happen? Never happened. Up until, like, very close to the end of the game. I admired it in the beginning of the game, but there came a point where I was like, all right, come on, guys. Like, you're holding me back from finishing this game and moving on to the next thing. Like, I'm a content creator. Like, let's move this along. So, what did you guys think about the Emmys?
I honestly thought it was a pretty good evolution of the SAX. Like, because it wasn't, although the one hit kill kind of sucked, but again, like the bosses, it was offset by the quick checkpoints, you know, but right outside the Emmy zones. I will say the segments, again, going back to the controls too, you know, when it was just the Omega Blaster for the first and maybe even the second one, that was fine. But then when you had to do the Omega Stream to like break the shield off the face, that got annoying in some parts.
Yeah, for me too, the Emmys felt like a step up in some ways compared to the SAX, but also a step down in certain other aspects. Like I definitely died to the Emmys way more than I did to the SAX ever, but for me, the SAX just felt way more fearsome. Like I definitely was on my toes way more with the SAX. Partly because the generous checkpoints too, like with that Alec brought up, like if you got trapped, like there was that tension initially, but then after that you're like, okay, like I know I'm gonna jump right back in here. I know the Emmys are very easily, like you can, if you're constantly moving, like they can't outpace you, I think. So there's always that aspect to it as well. Although it was cool, like getting those rare counters on them, and there's a couple times where I countered them, and then I was like, wait, what do I do? I'm like, oh, I got to get out of here. So,
yeah.
So that was super
slide
cool.
under there. Yeah.
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 So that was cool. Yeah, it never bothered me that we didn't beat them all too much because I did like how they were isolated to zones. I did like that. So I knew what I was getting into. Whereas with the SAX, granted, a lot of the SAX moments were scripted, but I did like, okay, I was like, okay, I know I'm going in here, checking the map, seeing, okay, I think this is not an Emmy zone, so I think I need to just go up to the left or something and stuff like that, like planning your routes. So yeah, I thought they were pretty cool. I did like the different abilities, like how some would freeze you, shock you, things like that. When you're in the water and you're like grappling away, knowing that they can run through easily, you're like, oh, like
the speed boost one.
Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
It was green or yellow. It was
Yellowish,
either green or yellow. I was like, I was like, run. And I'm so sorry, I forgot to ask, is anyone on a time constraint? Because I know we're a little over an hour, and I wanted to make sure, because I still got more to say. So, I'm not saying I hated the Emmys. I'm not saying that at all. Like I said, you criticize the things you love every time. This is Wannabe Critic Productions. We use that term jokingly, but like there's a reason, there's a reason we call ourselves that, right? And it's one of those things where it's like I criticize things heavily, and it's because I believe that they can be, whatever. Very rarely will you ever hear me say, even if I personally think something might be perfect, you're never going to hear me say like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with this. Never going to happen. Very rarely ever happens. I think this is still an amazing game. And I still think the Emmys are amazing. Like, it very much reminds me of kind of like the SAX encounters, but it also reminds me, like, they ripped elements from Metroid Prime 2, and trying to deal with the what were they, the Aether bad guys, right? They all kind of had a similar vibe to them, and you would have to tackle them in different ways. It just got to a point towards the end of the game, the last 80%, I'm like, come on, dude. Like, I got my freaking, I got the screw attack. Like, I should be unstoppable by now. You know what I mean? Because that's, like, kind of the MO in most of the other Metroid games. And I think they distinctively made this game, I get a little burpy. You know what I mean? Like, that happens to me.
It's the bush.
It is the bush. I think they made this game feel modern in such a sense. There's so many things where modern gamers who love hard games are going to eat this game up and love it, and there's a reason it's selling so well, and then there's a reason they put out a demo for it a couple days ago and said hey, everyone loves this, here's a taste. So Metroid fans, I'm gonna say this, I don't know if I'm gonna clip this, but someone should. Metroid is not going anywhere. Ain't gonna happen. It is here to stay, for sure. If it could survive Other M and Federation Force, holy crap. It's not going anywhere.
This is literally going to outsell the rest of the franchise.
Oh, it will. It's on track to, I think, if it hasn't already. Right. So when Metroid Prime 4 comes out, I mean, I can't wait. It's going to be insane.
Just give me the trilogy now. I haven't played it yet.
I know, on Switch, yeah.
Dude. I'm so excited. If it
happens, so long. Just give it to us.
It has to be happening. I think it's already done. Just they're just waiting for the right time because that's what Nintendo does. But there's so many things about this, and I have to nod to the studio, which I did hear that there might have been, a little bit of a kerfuffle, in the development process. Here's the thing, ladies and gents. We are in the industry of video game consumption, And people, I think, for the most part, there's always going to be disgruntled employees. There's always going to be people who feel like they might be overworked. But on the flip side of that, there's also going to be lots of people that love working hard and love delivering a quality product. So don't discount those people as well. Because a lot of times we hear stories about stuff and it's super easy to say like, oh, X, Y, and Z, these guys are the bad guys. That's not always the case. Reporter's going to report. Do you really, I don't buy into everything I see into the tabloids at all. So neither should you. This game was a labor of love. You could tell because of how intricate some of the details are within this thing. Mm-hmm. As a huge Metroid fan, as a big video game fan, and as, someone who kind of puts themselves into the shoes of the casual gamer, I think Alec kind of hit on the head. You can do it. It's not so hard that you can't do it, but this is by far the hardest Metroid game that exists. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest one without even, and now, I mean, there's a hard mode for this game. That's insane. I'm like, no, thank you. By the time I was done with it, go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, I had to dip out of our spoiler cast a little early, but I listened to that today, and one of our guests on it, Boris, I believe, he said on hard mode, one of the boss's attacks does like 4 tanks of health.
Yeah. Again, even taking that like Souls aspect, right? Like even taking that even further. Mm-hmm. Like if you you really want a challenge, like part of me thinks like
all my health that I finish with.
Yeah, literally. It's like, holy crap. I think we probably could expect to see a potential bundle with 2D Metroids in the future, potentially with Samus Returns, Zero Mission, potentially Zero Mission, Samus Returns, Super Metroid, and Metroid Fusion. Would not surprise me at all to see that happen. Would be perfect for the Switch. I mean, it would be insane. Go ahead, Brett.
I was gonna say, yeah, like this game is gonna sell so well, and people, most people won't know the legacy of the first 4 titles. Like I was streaming all the games. I literally had to download a 3DS emulator to play Samus Returns, and then for Fusion and Zero Mission, I did hook up my Wii U to play those from their virtual console. And so like that's just not super accessible for most people, and so they definitely need to work on incorporating that into some sort of bundle. Or I know like Game Boy is rumored to come to Switch Online. I don't know if that's just Game Boy, if that's going to include like Color, Advanced, stuff like that, but they definitely need to make some of their older Metroid games way more accessible to the general audience for sure.
Well, and there's one thing that Nintendo operates off of, and really, there's an air of third-party people, like things getting bought, like third-party titles being bought, like for instance, I think something that comes to mind is like something like THQ Nordic bringing a lot of these like legacy titles back to life, like Kingdoms of Amalur and stuff like that. And it's like, it may be a total loss, but they don't care. They're willing to like win the fans' hearts. Like that's what they want. And then, the kind of the competitive third-party space. There's only one thing Nintendo cares about, ladies and gents, and that's money. It's numbers. It is numbers. So the fact that this is selling so well, it's inevitable at this point. They're formulating ways. If they haven't already, they're going to be figuring out a way to get us more Metroid, more 2D Metroid for sure.
Honestly, if it's just a pack of Zero Mission and Fusion, just give that to me, please.
Yeah, I'd be down. I would be down. Literally, just do the same thing you did with Nintendo Switch with the expansion pack. Literally, just repackage some ROMs. I will pay $60 for them.
Yeah, I literally said like do 3D All Stars with Mario. Just don't because those games are not changed at all. Like literally, just take those games, put them in a wrapper, and put them on Switch. Like they still would play amazing.
I'll pay full price for them. I don't care. Like for real. I like to support Nintendo because I think they are. I don't want to say the little guy, but there's a level of integrity there. People are like, oh, why don't they update their stuff? And like, why don't they do like more powerful consoles and blah, blah, blah. They don't have to.
Like they optimize so well.
They don't have to make Mario look like a real person. They will never have to make Mario look like a real person. They know what they know how to make. They do it well. And they make non-emotion based decisions based off of objective numbers. And if you're running a business, I see people get super upset online, and I have no problem saying this. They're in the business to make money. They do not care about you. They want your dollars, and they want to have a profitable business. That's what it boils down to. So for me, it just so happens that they deliver good product most of the time. So for me, I'm like, I'll support that all day. Like, I don't care. Like, come on, let's do this.
And that's why Nintendo games never go on sale.
There you go.
Everybody supports them.
Exactly.
So they never have to go on sale because people are always buying those games.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And they know they literally have a market. Like we were talking about Super Mario All-Star, or, the Mario Party All-Stars a little bit ago. Literally, there is a market of people that may just buy that game, like, and maybe just the party games on Nintendo consoles in general. Like,
that's why Mario Kart 8 is still selling. It was one of the best-selling Switch games.
Yeah, it literally has not left the top 5 since release on Wii U. Yeah. Like, it's one of, like, the best. Yeah, it's insane. So, we kind of talked about, a lot of, like, the positive things, getting back to Metroid. Man, I love podcasting with you guys. This is great. I hope you guys are enjoying yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So kind of getting back to, the review process, I'm about, I'm pretty much done with what I wanted to say. I've said all my praises, all of my high points, my low points. We kind of come to realize, at the end of this game that it appears that Samus was kind of grown in a lab, which was new information and would kind of make sense as to why she's so in tune with her suit, and why the suit even makes sense for her to be using. And, it would have made sense for her to kind of be a parlay in a way. Maybe the Kozo were like, hey, yeah, we'll make you a warrior. We'll make you like this person that'll go out and do all this stuff if you just leave us alone. Like, we know we have advanced technology. We know we have stuff you want. Literally just leave us alone. We'll grow you this chick. Here you go. Leave us alone. And I loved how they incorporated so much lore about, the specific clans and all that stuff like that. That guy's Ravenbeak's power beam is just so dope. Like, there were so many aspects that as a Metroid nerd, I was like, oh, this is so good. Like, so cool. Like, very rarely do you ever get like this hyped about lore in games. And with a game franchise that's so lore based, I mean, the Metroid Prime trilogy is literally based off of so much reading. There's so many things you have to scan, like,
yeah. And
to me, that is super duper important, like, for giving context to one of these legacy games and providing things, kind of setting the path in a way for lots of games in the future. I think of a game even like Control kind of reminds me of that. Like Alan Wake kind of reminds me of that same thing, providing a lot of context. Like, if you want to actually learn what happened here and what's going on, like, yeah, you can have a pretty good experience if you don't do those auxiliary ways of getting information, but it's way better if you do. And if you did, whenever you get to this point in Dread, it's like, oh my God, it's insane. Like, it's jaw-dropping. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say one quick thing I did just pop in my head is, like, throughout the game, or towards the end of the game, when you have like your Metroid powers are like showing up, I kind of wish that there was like an actual power in the game, not just something like, oh yeah, your Metroid powers are popping up, like, or showing up. Like, yeah, make that a game mechanic.
They like do that technically at the very end when you're running out of the planet,
right?
And you're just touching people, and I agree with that.
Well, I think that was kind of a nod to the end of Super Metroid as well, because at the end of Super Metroid, you're kind of screwed, and the baby Metroid like totally saves you and totally like bestows its power upon you, and that's how you're able to beat Mother Brain. And like, to me, that was what I thought was like, oh my God, that suit looks incredible. Like, whenever she kind of, and I think before literally you even realized that you're becoming a Metroid, whenever she was talking to what's his face, the first Chozo you run into, I literally said, I was like, oh my God, Samus is the last Metroid. Like, Samus is the living last Metroid, because that was such a big thing in Super Metroid. Like the last Metroid
Fusion
is in Cap. Yeah, even in Fusion too. Yeah, same thing. Like,
because they literally infuse Metroid DNA with her.
Exactly. Like, she is the last Metroid. So to see that suit kind of pop up, there's so many questions like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? Like, we got a super dope suit with the last game. Like, how is that going to impact the next chapter of this franchise? Is it going to show up in Metroid Prime 4? Is it just going to be in the next 2D Metroid? Like, so many questions.
Shout out to the gravity suit design. I love that gravity suit design.
So cool. So cool. Yeah, I was kind of sad we didn't get it earlier because it felt like we couldn't quite explore those more rigid areas more. But, you know, whatever. So, either way. Gentlemen, do you have any final thoughts that you want to kind of say? You know, I've been saying a lot of it and just kind of asking questions, but what are kind of your like last thoughts and like last little things that if you haven't gotten a chance to say it, like now's the time type thing? Like, go for it.
This game is awesome. The last boss fight, like, I died so many times to Ravenbeak, but oh my gosh, it is such a fun boss fight. Once you get like that first second phase down, like it is, you stop getting angry with it and we're like, okay, this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah, for me, we didn't bring it up, but the fact that the game was 60 frames and it looked as good as it did was incredible. Like, that game was so smooth in the performance, and the controls or the controls in terms of like the flow of Samus's movement felt the best it has ever felt for a Metroid game. Like you mentioned earlier, Gabe, like Super Metroid feels a little floaty. Fusion probably feels the best next to Dread, but I feel like Dread, it just feels the best to play as Samus in this game. And yeah, I can't wait to see where this story goes. Like, they said it's the end of this saga, but clearly there's some cliffhangers.
It's just beginning.
Yeah, I just, this game was so phenomenal that it was so cinematic too. Like, the QTEs and all that stuff was like insane. Like, there was moments where like I was like, oh crap, I have to like press this button because like I'm in awe of what is happening in front of me on the screen. Like, it was incredible. This is easily the best game Mercury Steam's ever made. Yeah, it's just so fun. Like, my expectations were so high for this game. Not only that it's a Metroid game, but that it's Metroid 5, Metroid Dread, like the sequel to this critically acclaimed game 20 years ago. And in my opinion, they exceeded those expectations. So I was just blown away by that. And yeah, I just can't wait to see what this means for Prime 4, the next 2D Metroid game, and just the Metroid franchise as a whole.
My only fear with Metroid Prime 4 is that in true Metroid fashion, I think it's probably going to take place in between the events that happen in Dread, as it has in the past. Because the Metroid Prime games take place in between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, technically, chronologically. So my only fear is that, because Other M is canon, my only fear is that the events that whatever happens to Samus in that time, worst case scenario, we're playing in the Fusion suit. Like, that'd be rad. Like, that'd be cool, right?
Yes.
I wouldn't hate that,
Which they made the Fusion suit look so good at those beginning cutscenes.
Yeah,
they did.
All the concept art from that beginning part, but then the ending cards that you get depending on completion percentage, yeah, all that stuff was so cool, amazing.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with the way that they showed you. They didn't tell you what happened with her suit. They were like, yeah, you should surmise that she was working with the Federation to like adapt a version of this suit that she had now had, because the Kozo is kind of a organic material when you think about it, the Various suit. So it would make sense for her to be able to kind of be mutated and like adapt to it, and it would make sense, it being technology, for them to be able to work with her and like get something else designed. So without even having to have any exposition for that, they literally showed you, it's like, this is what her suit looks like now. Like, you don't have to wonder. We arrived here. This is what happened. So I'll be super interested to see with the whole Metroid suit vibe, whatever that is, like, what's next? How can they top this? Like, how can they make it feel Metroid again, And I'm really excited to see what happens. So, but I don't know how you guys do it over there at Waypoint. If you guys had to put a number on this, though, out of 10. I don't personally use decimals. I don't believe in decimals for scores. If you do, that's fine. If you give it like a 7.25 or something like that, I might have to kick you. But if you had to put a number on this bad boy, what would you give it and why?
I kind of have the score out. It'd be a 9, just because those couple things that we did mention, like the control scheme seemed odd. But man, the looks, the cinematic view, like I knew I was gonna be into this game after beating that first boss, like getting that cutscene after you beat him. Like it was just so cool. But it's not quite to that like 10 out of 10 masterpiece game. I mean, it is a masterpiece, but you know what I mean. There's just enough off about it that doesn't quite get that 10 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
Yeah, this is tough. Because whenever I have to give a number for something, it's like I want to give it a 10. I want to give it a 10 out of 10, but at the same time, like that just makes me think of perfect. I'm like, well, no game is perfect, like you said earlier, Gabe. So I'll give it a 9 as well. Yeah, and I didn't bring this up before. I want to just say it, but I think Metroid has the best power progression in any video game ever. Like the series as a whole. Like if you're main pathing this game, you're getting upgrades left and right, and it just feels so good. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and I think those scores are perfectly fair and like they totally make sense. I think it's incredible that we got such a polished experience, and it's a sequel to a game that came out 20 years ago. And I think Metroid in a way has always kind of been about taking a simple idea and innovating on that idea. Mm-hmm. And we saw it in little ways. Like one thing, for instance, why did it take so long for us to find the morph ball? That's usually like the first thing you find in a Metroid game, right? I love that it took so long. It's just like when you finally got the morph ball, it was like, oh, finally, yes,
yeah,
like, at last. You know, like little things they did to make it feel different,
like the slide.
Oh, the slide,
yes, super cool. I loved that.
That's probably why it took so long to get the morph ball.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got your slide.
Yeah, you have your slide. You can get to these places and navigate. Like it's fine. I do think there are aspects of this game that are big knocks for me personally and speaking, like, again, trying to take in, like, what is the average gamer going to think about this? The average gamer might play the entire thing and think, like, oh, yeah, like, Emmys, that should be fine. Like, yeah, they told us that I couldn't kill it, you know, but as a Metroid fan, I'm like, but I can kill it, though, right? Like, I should be able to, right? Like, that's never happened before. There's never been an enemy in a Metroid game that you couldn't kill eventually. Ever, if I'm not mistaken. Right? To my knowledge, Brett?
As far as I know.
Well, SAX, right?
Well, you fight SAX though, right?
Yeah, but you fight the Emmys too once you get the Omega Blaster.
Right, but I mean, like,
or Omega Cannon.
Was it the same process with SAX as well, where you had to find like a specific thing each time to be able to like hamper it, or was it just like purely based off of escape?
You had to run away. And then once I think you get the plasma beam infusion, that's when you can start hurting it a little bit.
Right. So like, yeah, there wasn't ever a time though where like you like would acquire an item. So it's like if you had a couple Emmys left, it wasn't like you had 2 or 3 Emmys left and you're like, oh, well, it's no big deal. Like I have the wave beam and I know the wave beam can take them out, or I have the Omega beam, like this new beam we have that I have all the time. Like it wasn't like we had that. You had to go through the same process of acquiring it each time. So there may be an aspect of it to where it's like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense that I would get this. But as a Metroid fan, I'm thinking to myself, well, eventually I got to be able to kill these freaking guys, right? Because that would speak to not only the legacy of Metroid games and that you're pretty much always able to, not with ease, but always overcome your obstacles with an ability that you have permanently. Mm-hmm. So as someone who was always I was kind of like looking for like a special missile or something new that we didn't really ever get. So while that's borderline nitpicky, I do think it's a valid point. And you guys are totally right. Like, the Emmy encounters are interesting and they're great. But I do think it is a valid point to bring up. Repeated boss battles. Don't recall that ever being a thing. Maybe in Metroid Samus Returns for 3DS.
Yeah.
You know,
that's like within the context of that game's story, so it makes sense for that. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, I don't want to say it's lazy, but it's like, okay, well, I already know how to fight this freaking guy, so they obviously wanted to take up my time here and potentially set me back if I die here. Again, borderline nitpicky. Boss battles. And kind of segueing into boss battles, there were just some that were crucial for you to proceed that just felt like they might have been kind of misplaced. Would have been amazing to be able to fight the cross bomb boss towards the beginning of the game, because that enemy you had been running into, as we kind of saw its evolution continuing, it just seemed kind of like out of place for that type of enemy who had like evolved to that next step to be so irritating so late in the game. It's like we should have fought him way earlier, and like had this ability way earlier in a way. It just felt there were certain boss battles that just felt out of place to me. So there were some that felt kind of placeholdery, and there were some that just kind of felt out of place. I thought the big ones, like fighting Kraid, fighting the first one, fighting Ravenbeak, there were some that were a blast, and I had no problem going back to that checkpoint because it was forgiving. But again, that's just something for me personally. I was like, I don't know, man, So this game borders between amazing and great. And I do think it is an amazing game. Because for me, a 10 out of 10 is near perfect, right? No game ever is going to have, like, no flaws.
Mm-hmm.
But this game is awesome. And to me, it was, like, just personal things and also things like, man, why'd they do that like this? I think I'm going to go with an 8.
Okay.
Because it's just enough for me to where it was, like, as a Metroid fan, a big Metroid fan who's, like, super hard on the series in general, there were just some things that didn't quite set well with me, but I still think this is a incredible game. Like, I love it. I don't know if I'll be going back to it anytime soon, but I did love this game. So 2 9s and an 8 on this one, or on this Game Club episode. So there you have it.
If we did decimals, I probably would do 8.5. But being the whole numbers, I'm like, I'd bump it up to a 9.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It was one of those things where, and you can decimal away. You can do whatever you want. I'm personally not going to do it.
Yeah.
And if I had,
I was playing along.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard because whenever I ask myself the question is like, is this closer to an 8 or is this closer to a 9 for me personally? I find myself saying, I think 8 is right here,
Yeah.
So there's that. But I totally respect the 9s. I think, there's not that much difference between an 8 and a 9. There's a good reach there's a good reach between an 8 and a 10, but there's not that much reach between an 8 and a 9. There's not that much reach between a 9 and a 10. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun to talk with you guys. I hope you guys have had a blast. I have. Hopefully we can do something in the future. I'm going to ask you about something after we get off mic. But I appreciate you guys coming on for this episode of Game Club. Ladies and gentlemen, definitely check out all the stuff we have down in the description down below. It would seriously mean the world. But Alec, why don't you kind of take us off, take the lead in us signing off? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at albob875. And then if you want to follow our podcast Shared Screens, the best way to do that is to go to bio.link/shared screens. Because with the rebrand, we weren't able to grab all the same usernames. So that website will take you to a place you can find all our socials, all our podcast sites, and our merch store.
Very nice. There you have it. Brett, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm obviously with Shared Screens as well. So at everything Alex said, that's same links, everything. My Twitter is twitter.com/JetBramerson. And then, I stream occasionally on Twitch over at twitch.tv/JimTasty. So,
there you have it. Definitely go check out their content. I will say it is a completely different flavor, a completely different feel than what we do over here. So, obviously, Wannabe Critic Productions is very, we like to be relatively family friendly. It's a crapshoot over there, over at Shared Screens. You never know what you're gonna get. You know, you could have something that's squeaky clean. If Jordan Deeb's on it, it's not gonna be squeaky clean. I can promise you that. But very talented creators over there. If you want to go give these guys some love, definitely go check out their content over there. I'm super happy to see you guys continuing doing what you're doing, and would love to collaborate again in the future. So thank you guys so much for coming on, and say goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, once again, thank you so much for showing up today. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I know that's the thing that all the YouTubers do. Everyone's asking to sub. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and who knows, you might even see a video every now and then that you actually like or may be interested in. Not only that, I do a bunch of stuff, so make sure you check all the information down in the description down below. We got podcasts, we got Let's Plays, we got all kinds of stuff for all kinds of fandoms. So make sure you check that out. I would seriously, seriously appreciate it, and I would love to see you around here more. I am Gabe Real Fast. I will always be the Wannabe Critic.